Andor Episode 8 dropped last week. We know we're a little late to the party, we're a small team, and we just got so excited to cover Tales of the Jedi. But nonetheless, better late than never. Episode 8, titled Narkina 5, was definitely one of the slower episodes. It kinda makes sense, they wouldn't want to go all out on the same day that much of the fandom was really focused on Tales, but it was a solid episode nonetheless. Cassian has been incarcerated on an imperial prison, two characters that we've been waiting to meet finally did, and a major Rogue One character showed up. It should be interesting to see where things head in episode 9 as we begin to near the end of the first season. With that in mind, spoilers are of course ahead for Andor Episode 8. We begin on Niamos, where last week Cassian was wrongfully arrested and sentenced to 6 years in imperial prison. We see some shore troopers once again. One detail we missed last week is that the shore trooper who arrested Cassian was actually voiced by Sam Witwer, aka the voice of Darth Maul in the Clone Wars, as well as Starkiller from The Force Unleashed. It's possible this was him once again in episode 8, although all he really said was "move it, don't look at me," and a few other quick lines. Cassian is led outside where prisoners are being sorted and sent off to labor camps. Star Wars is again taking inspiration for the Empire from real-life fascism. Cassian, who's using the fake name of Keith Gergo, is told he's being sent to Narkina 5, a name which he doesn't recognize. He and other prisoners are sent to board transports. We now cut to the Bureau of Standards and Cyril Karn. We hear a mouse droid as a few Imperial officers, including Cyril's boss and Dedra's assistants, approach his cubicle. Cassian and 4 other inmates board the transport as their handcuffs magnetize to their chairs. They're also forced to remove their footwear. Back to Cyril once again, who is finally at the Imperial Security Bureau and meeting Dedra Meero. She mentions that she's reviewing the Ferrix incident from episode 3. Cyril has put in 5, which he corrects to 6, requests to look for Cassian Andor. She wants to know why. He says it's because Cassian is a murderer and a threat to the Empire. He reveals that he never even saw the report on Ferrix, which he was forced to sign. Cyril is given the report as Dedra heads upstairs for an ISB meeting. We now jump to Narkina 5, which appears to be a moon orbiting a gas giant. The moon is rocky and aquatic. We see one of 7 floating prisons, which Cassian will be sent to. These installations remind me a lot of the Raft from the MCU, as shown in Captain America: Civil War. Back at the ISB, Dedra has recovered the stolen Imperial Starpath unit from Ferrix and presents it to the ISB. Among them again this week is Colonel Wolf Yularen. The ISB seems to finally be on Cassian's trail, as they're now trying to identify none other than Luthen, who they've codenamed Axis. Cassian arrives within the confines of the prison walls, barefoot and hands behind his head. He and his fellow inmates are greeted by officers who explain that this is a factory. We find out why exactly the prisoners are barefoot, as they demonstrate a security feature that allows the floors to become electrified, sending Cassian and the others immediately to the floor. The guards wear some sort of an insulated boot, which makes them impervious to its effects. Back on Coruscant, Cyril tells Dedra there's a lot missing in the Ferrix report. Dedra is most interested in identifying Axis or Luthen, but Cyril only really got a good look at him as he zipped by on a speeder bike. He says he heard his voice and would recognize it. Dedra tells him to stop filing reports, and she'll tell the Bureau of Standards he was of service to the Empire, but Cyril wants more. He wants to be an asset for the investigation. Dedra tells him to forget this ever happened. Cassian is brought further into the facility. He's clearly paying attention to the guards' boots and how unorganized they seem to be. It's the facility itself, not the officers, that will pose the real problem when he tries to escape. He's finally lowered down to his factory level. We learn that on top of there being 7 separate prisons, there are 7 levels per factory, 7 rooms per level, 7 tables per room, 7 men per table. Cassian meets Kino Loy, his unit manager, played by none other than Andy Serkis. The actor has played many iconic roles in different franchises throughout the years, from Gollum to Ulysses Claw. However, it's not his first Star Wars role. He previously portrayed Snoke in the sequel trilogies. Although Snoke could have been handled much better, we can't deny his performance was pretty solid. That begs the question though, is Kino Loy actually Snoke? Probably not. Anyways, Loy, Although a prisoner himself is in charge of the room, Loy explains that it's a 12-hour shift and Cassian is on table 5. Now there's been a lot of speculation as to what exactly they're building in this factory. Everyone seems to be pointing their fingers towards parts for the Death Star. If not, maybe TIE fighters or Imperial probe droids. The Death Star theory would certainly be ironic, considering that weapon is exactly what killed Cassian at the conclusion of Rogue One. Perhaps we'll get a definitive answer next week. Loy explains that every table in the room is quote-unquote playing against one another, while he's playing against the other rooms. Cassian heads to his table and meets his table mates. There's Jembok, Zal, Taga, Ulaf, Ham, and the most interesting, Melshi, who goes on to later become Sergeant Melshi in the Rebel Alliance. In Rogue One, he's a close friend of Cassian's, and even helps rescue Jyn Erso before dying in the Battle of Scarif along with the rest of the Rogue One crew. We learned that slow-performing tables can also be disciplined. Now over to Mon Mothma, with her husband Perrin and Tay. Mothma is trying to secure votes to stall Emperor Palpatine's latest overreach. They're drinking a Chandrillan drink called Squig. After Perrin leaves, Tay tells Mon that new banking regulations are making it difficult for him to move money, those funds of course supporting the early rebellion. Mon's daughter Leda is taking notice of how much Tay is around her mother. Perhaps she'll eventually go to her father and subsequently get the Empire more suspicious of Mon Mothma. Back at the prison, Cassian observes Taga using hand signals to communicate with another prisoner on another bridge. Is an escape plan already in motion? Mon Mothma is now talking with other senators, most notably about Palpatine's ideologies, the way he goes about speeches, and his new PORD legislation on arrests, which was put into effect in Episode 7. Cassian heads to his housing unit, as Zal explains a few important things. The floor has these white lights. If they start flashing, you have 7 seconds to get to your cell before they turn red, and the floor is electrified. Jembok shows him that their food comes out of a tube as some sort of a paste. The winners get flavor in their food paste. Kinda, again, like a twisted game. Top table gets taste, bottom table gets fried. We are also shown Cassian's tab, which has 2,189 days, or shifts, left on his sentence. The other inmates ask what Cassian did, to which he accurately responds with nothing. They then ask him about the PORD, as all of their sentences had recently doubled, to which he says he doesn't know. We of course know that this was due to the Aldhani heist in Episode 6. We learn that Mon Mothma and Perrin are actually in an arranged marriage. That definitely explains a lot. Cassian sits awake in the night, while the electrified floor illuminates a red light. We now jump forward by 30 days, or more accurately 30 shifts. We see the prisoners all showering in a big herd. Cassian and the rest of his table have become an efficient machine, pumping out the mechanism very quickly. Shifting focus over to Ferrix, where Brasso walks by the hotel turned Imperial base of operations. Over at Cassian's place, Bix and B2 are taking care of his mother. Brasso arrives and Bix reveals that she fell while trying to pry open an old tunnel under the hotel that could work for the rebellion to sneak in. She is a rebel through and through. Watching them is Vel and Cinta. We know that Vel has been tasked with taking down Cassian, as he is a loose end that knows who Luthen is and could track the Aldhani heist back to him. Vel and Cinta argue about splitting up. Cinta says sticking together will draw too much attention. Bix talks to Pac, and then says she needs to get something from the back, code for using the communicator to contact Luthen. She climbs the silo tower and turns the device on. We cut to Luthen's shop and see that a few new items are for sale, giving us a few new Easter eggs to talk about. Among the ones we've already discussed, like the Mandalorian chestplate, Wookiee warrior helmet, Starkiller armor, and Gungan shield, there is now a Jedi Temple Guard mask. Very cool. This headpiece here also looks a lot like one that Padme wore in Attack of the Clones. Not too sure what's up with these claws though. In the back, Kleya tells Luthen about Bix trying to contact them, looking for Cassian and saying his mother is ill. Kleya is worried that the ISB is listening and convinces Luthen to cut the Ferrix frequency. They will find Andor another way. Bix continues to listen for a response that she'll never get. Vel leaves Ferrix as Cinta remains and continues to watch for leads on Cassian Andor. Luthen is now aboard his ship from the early episodes and is headed out. Cassian is woken up abruptly to a scream and a buzzing noise. Another prisoner named Vimos seems to have purposefully jumped onto the floor, possibly killing himself, continuing with these dark and adult themes in this show. Back on Ferrix, we hear the clanging noise that residents made when the Primo security officers attempted to arrest Cassian. Bix learns that the Imperial officers are all over Pax's yard and have arrested him. Maybe they intercepted Bix's attempt to contact Luthen. An Imperial recognizes Bix, and they begin to chase her down. Luthen arrives on the planet Sagra Milo. There we see a familiar Rebel partisan nicknamed Two Tubes, who's seen in Rogue One. There's also a pair of Rebel X-Wing fighters. You can tell by our channel's name that we love seeing these. Luthen, of course, sits down with Saw Gerrera, making his return from Rogue One, The Clone Wars, Rebels, and Fallen Order. The two are asking each other if they are responsible for Aldhani, which they both deny. Luthen has brought Saw some gear, but offers it for free if Saw will meet a rebel named Anto Krieger to consider some sort of an operation with him. We know Saw is a rebel extremist, and he denies, saying he won't put his men at risk for someone else. These are far from the later and more collaborative days of the rebellion. Luthen tells him to think about it. Saw is hesitant because Krieger was a separatist. He and his people, of course, aligned with the Republic during the Clone Wars. Luthen says they need to put aside their differences if they ever hope to stop the Empire. Back to Ferrix, Bix has been arrested and is taken to the hotel/makeshift Imperial base. There, Dedra has just finished interrogating and more than likely torturing Pak. They keep him in the room so that Bix is forced to see what they did to him. Before it's her turn, Dedra says, "Hello, Bix," and they strap her to the chair with the door shutting. To close out the episode, we get one final scene of Cassian and his table continuing to build. Roll credits. And that does it for episode 8. Definitely a slower one this week. But again, that makes sense with Tales of the Jedi dropping on the very same day. Episode 9 is shaping up to be pretty big though. The ISB are finally on Cassian's trail, as is Vel and Cinta. How will Luthen convince Saw Gerrera to collaborate and contribute to the larger rebel cause? Will we see Cassian bust out of the Narkina 5 prison? Let us know your episode 9 predictions in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe to catch our breakdown afterwards. But until next time, Red Squadron, may the Force be with you. Red 5, standing by.